This Friday, it's Fun Seat
For your devices. He's not giving up his phone. I'm not giving up mine.
And he's not giving up. I'm not giving mine up.
versus Back Seat
Tomorrow we ride, compadre.
in the wimpiest road trip of the summer. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul, rated PG. Back Seat
Tomorrow we ride, compadre.
in the wimpiest road trip.
Tyler's gonna have a live mic.
Tyler does have a live mic for a moment. Hey all, my name is Tyler Rockwell. I'm a producer and environment artist on Camelot Unchained. I know there's plenty of you on here who have been watching us over and over, so some of this may be familiar to you. For those of you who've never seen us build an island, this is a good starting point because I will literally be taking an empty space and making an island. And one of the things I want you guys to take note of is this is still very much like our a tool that's in its infancy. There's plenty of room to grow with it, so some of these things you won't see a lot of fancy tools yet, but you will see me very quickly put an island together. So when we talk about how things can go really quickly and how easy it is for us to put together an island with the tools that we've built.
Music volume is a little.
Sure.
It's kind of drowning you out a little bit. So, yeah.
Hold on. Check, check. Can you guys hear me okay?
Try again. That's better.
Okay, so I'm gonna just real quickly start again. My name is Tyler Rockwell. I'm a producer and environment artist on Camelot Unchained. For those of you who have watched some of our environment streams, you'll have seen us work on islands. In this case, I'm going to be starting an island from scratch. All of our tools are very much in their infancy, but they're very powerful already, so you'll see me very quickly, just suddenly there'll be an island there. What I'm going to do is we use control points to basically set up an island, and then later on, as we get farther along in the project, we'll start worrying about more tools to do some of these things faster. But hopefully you'll be surprised if you haven't seen this before in how fast it actually goes right off the bat. So what I'm going to be doing is kind of moving a bunch of points around, and then I will throw a mod on it. And I'll probably stop, since I'm kind of doing this as an introduction for people who may not have seen this, I'll probably stop, open up a mod, and explain how those things fit together. So I'm just going to get working. I'm going to mute my mic, and I'm just going to make an island real quick, and you can see how quick it is. I do want to throw one other thing in here. As with any production environment, there are going to be bugs. It might crash on me. I will just keep working. I'm literally waiting for a large terrain generation threading drop from Brad tomorrow, which should improve things, particularly in the editor. So in the meantime, if it crashes or something, that's just status quo for today. turn my music down, and I'm actually gonna do a little bit more talking.
Yeah, getting you on.
I'm live. Okay. Too many buttons. Okay. So demoing this. Right now, this is the editor. This is the Database Explorer view. So everything is kind of contained in this whole editor. In this case, we have all our assets for uploading stuff to our database, all the resources that come from those assets. And in this case, I'm making a new zone. And then I'm going to pop over my world editor. And we're going to suspend the console so I have a little bit more room. And right now what I've done is I have changed the scale of the terrain segments to be 512 meters point to point. So that is literally this point to this point. And so we're over to 1,000 meters over here. And to get this going, I just need to touch some things. And like I said, it's entirely possible that we could see a little crash, which would suck if it already happened. Nope, we're dead. And I'll be right back up. So this thing actually defaults to a block of terrain, as you can see here. And these are all different maps, or zones, islands, however you want to think of them. So we'll go back to this one. We'll set this to 512. We'll turn this on. What I'm going to do, let's see, what do I want to put on this? Let's see if we put something simple on it. So what I'm doing here is I'm picking a base mod. The mod is basically a whole bunch of information on what assets and textures and warps we want to apply to the terrain. So in this case, the mod encompasses a whole bunch of different settings. So what I'm going to do here is just pick a simple grassland. Grassland 1, Grassland 2, I don't even know what that is. Okay, so once it starts generating terrain, so right now what it did was it put in 512 meters of one mod. So this is a mixture of two different textures and a whole bunch of grass cards spawned on that. If I go in here and I change the base mod again,
Yeah.
Arthurian home island beta, grassland, grassland. I know one of these has like a missing texture, so it's going to go wonky if I put it on. Let's put the Arthurian setup. So this guy right now, he might. So this mod, the fact that you see sand here, this mod might actually have a beach applied to it. So I'm going to just pop the terrain up and see what happens. So there we go. So what this did was it made a setup of materials here. This one does not look like it's generating everything. And let's see. The one I want, I just can't seem to find. There it is. Here we go. This is just a basic setup. Okay, so here we go. Literally everything that's happening on this piece of terrain, this is 512 meters, is completely procedural and created by the artists. Interestingly, I'm not seeing grass. But all I have to do to make the rest is give these guys a jiggle, which should work. Of course, I get something weird today. So what I'm doing here is just switching between zones because I think it's gotten stuck trying to update it. Oh, and I know why. There we go. Nope. This is not my demo day. Like I said, I've got this whole huge change. I mentioned it in last week's top 10 that's going in tomorrow morning. It's going to change a lot of things about terrain generation. So we may trade one bug for another, and that's my okay. There we go, populated with stuff. So in this case, it's actually populating with grass cards. And since I've talked about it so much already, I'm just going to drop over here. For those who don't know what the terrain mods are, I will pull up this one. So this is actually a smaller one. What this is a node editor, and for anybody who's familiar with a node editor, then each node does something and you connect them in interesting ways to get different results. That's kind of the easiest way to put this. In this case, since I haven't looked at this in a while, so these are Perlin noise nodes, and each one of these has a little white dot coming off of it, and I will then take that and continue on down a daisy chain here. So in this case, this slope select decides when different materials will appear based on the degree that the angle that the terrain is at. So I can say, you know, 0, in this case I've said 0 to 5, blend from 0 to 5 degrees, and then blend out 25 to 28 degrees, put one material, and so on and so forth. And in this case, what I can use that for is if the terrain ever goes up at a curve, I can put like little bits of rock and gravel, and then I can put, you know, maybe some rock or mud, and then it goes back up to grass as you go up to the top of the hill. The cool thing that I like using this for is kind of clearly showing the players where you can't run up. And this is literally, that value could change, so we will kind of adjust things more as we get farther along. So for now, it's partly aesthetic, partly game, but the idea would be if you ever saw like a certain stone texture on the side of a hill, you would know I can't walk up that. And then if we lower the angle, I can put a different texture on there, and then you could visually see, oh yeah, my character should be able to walk up that. That's one of the fun things that kind of came out of that. In this case, we go into our slope select, multi-mod. Multi-mod then goes down to a size select. The size select determines the size of the triangles. If you look at the world editor here, this one triangle is broken up into sub-triangles. So let's turn this back on. And if you look here, we've got the original points, and if I go back down, you see that the triangle has been subdivided again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And as you can see, we're getting smaller and smaller, and the system will dynamically LOD the terrain based on distance from the player. And I think something to do with height. I don't remember the specifics. But as you can see, this gets denser and denser. So if I wanted to, I can literally just go in and move like one tiny little point. And you can see there all the little points are generating right now. So most of the time, we don't need to go in to this level. It's just kind of if we want to, we can. Most of the time, we work in a much higher scale, making big changes to the islands. So in this case, let's just cross our fingers. So in this case, you can see what I was just talking about. Right when the terrain angles up, we start drawing this rock. And in this case, you can see we've got like a mud and gravel to rock back to grass again. And if you look in the terrain mod, that's that whole section right here that I just went through. This continues on down to like warps. Size select says, hey, at a certain scale of those subdivisions, I want you to do a vertical warp. And then we can basically just layer and layer and layer and layer. In this case over here, this is a spawn node. And this is just spawning little rocks all over the place. And each one of these things has its own setting, so it has a probability, a collision radius. Anything on this row knows of each other. They don't know of the row below it. So in this case, that means that with these collision radiuses of 4, 3, 4, they will all stay apart from each other. And then when I mix it with these ones down here, there's a chance that they'll be close to the ones on the row above them. So you get a little bit of randomness. The thing is, you could fiddle with this for hours and just keep refining. Aligning terrain, that will make, if you stick a tree and it spawns on an angled face, the tree will then align to the terrain. So you can kind of change how things align to the terrain. Align normals. This is more of a lighting thing, so that if a lighting and blending, so that if you have like grass cards that are pointing up, what we do is we take the terrain's average normal, or I think it's just the normal right underneath it. So each vertex in every triangle has 3 vertices. Each vertex has a normal angle. That normal defines how the light hits the poly. So when we align 2 normals of the terrain, what that'll do is it will make the normals of the card sitting on top of it align with the terrain. So you get a nice blend. It doesn't look like a poly plane lit separately from this below it. Min and max scale, that's just variables, and it'll pick between those and randomly spawn them. I never ever touch min aspect, max aspect. So and you ever play with the min and max aspect in the spawn nodes? I don't think I've ever touched it.
I have to go back. I don't think so.
Okay. As you can see, there's plenty of little toys to play with that we haven't even touched yet. Yeah, I mean, literally, looking at this now, I just noticed this skew and stretch in the Perlin noise that, in all honesty, I have not even messed with before. Anyway, there's a lot of things we can do in here. It is a very robust system. And right now, that setup is what you're seeing right there. There's things that I can get more nitpicky about, like I would like to blend the dirt in better with the grass, and I can easily do that through there. There's a lot of things I'd like to do. I like to add more plants and more weeds. In this case, you can see that this part of the terrain has gone below 0, which is where the water plane is. And what has happened here is you see, obviously, that plane of water poking through the terrain. If I add a beach mod to this mod, then what that'll do is it'll say, based on height or distance inward, where to put something. And in this case, we call it a beach mod because it is most often used to make a beach. So I can say, so many meters above and below, put generic sand, and then as I go lower under the water, maybe put like rocks and debris and stuff. And then above that, I can say assign, this whole grassy mod to it. And what will happen is this whole thing will dynamically change based on the parameters, based on me moving the points. So I'm going to keep actually moving points here. I'm going to keep generating terrain. Like I said, there are a couple of bugs right now that I'm hoping will just get squashed tomorrow morning. So if it crashes, it crashes, but I'm just going to keep poking at it. So there's this little guy likes to come up and usually is innocuous. So in this case, that's 1,000 meters across. And literally, if that can be an island. We can even get bigger, so I can make these points go out 32 kilometers. Oh, I don't think I've ever done that. So the points actually go out 32 kilometers. And you can see my clip plane in the scene has squashed it. So there's the clip plane being adjusted. So at this point, I can make a 64 kilometer wide grass island by just hitting the point that's way out here and the point that's way out here and draw another 32 kilometers inside the one that I've already drawn. As quick as I just did this one. So you can see it's very quick for us to make an island. It starts getting more interesting when we start playing with it more and getting more specific. I'm literally flying in slowly and zooming my mouse wheel. So sorry for the constant rattle you can probably hear. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put a different mod on here to illustrate how the system will dynamically change the terrain based on the parameters that are in it. Another way I can show that is if I just move a few points. So one of the things I have set up in here is I've got all the terrain set up just as flat grass and dirt and stuff. And then I've said if the terrain begins to change its angle from, I think, 0 to 10 degrees or something, I want you to start doing something different. Underneath that, there's a warp that has been added in here, and we can do multiple warps. You can overlap warps. We have a kind of in its infancy plateau mod, which will give us harder edges. You can mix these things. You can get all different kinds of weird and wacky results. So in this case, what I'll do is I'll just show you how it will change based on the moving a point. Wow, of course, the minute I do this, there it goes. So as you can see, now it's put in the rock and dirt in here. Now, one of the things that happens is this isn't so pretty. One of the things that Ben and I have been talking about is better ways to build out a library of assets. So instead of building, Tyler wants to make a Arthurian or neutral or TDD grassland setup like this. What we've talked about doing is breaking things up so that maybe we have, here's all the flowers, here's all the grass, and we set those up in little mods. And then what we can do is we can save those out and reference them as groups through another mod. That's just an XREF node. And in that case, that thinking could help fix this issue, because the problem is the terrain was set up with a very clear idea in mind. So what I wanted was just these little hills. I just wanted a little bit of breakup in the scene, so it wasn't just completely flat. And in this case, what I did is I said, okay, when you have this texture here, I want you to add just a little bit of noise to it so it gets a little bit bumpy. So I don't know if this is a good example, but if you get down here, it's not a really good example. You start seeing bumps, and that's actually where the grass starts poking through. And the problem that I was just talking about was, if you notice, this mod doesn't have anything high. So the minute I do this, we get outside of what I'm actually wanting it to do. I don't want it to look like this. This is what happens when I go outside the bounds of what I've set it up to do. So one of the things that Ben and I have talked about is a way to mix the mods a little bit better, a little bit smarter, and kind of treating all the different mods as their own individual assets, so that somebody could put trees and then grass and then ferns and then put a warp and another warp and another warp. And even if we got to kind of weird mountainous ranges, what we would do is bury within each of the texture sets of what to do based on angle. We bury within that instruction, so that if you do get too high or something, that it will know what to do and make something that looks good. And that's just one of those learning curves where we figure out better ways to do things. Like flowers, and literally the flowers. I can show you a fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my screen. So if you've ever watched any of the older streams, you'll see me do this all the time. Move this guy over here. Okay, so down in the bottom corner is my mod. And what I'm going to do is let's find those flowers. Grass, flower. So one of the things we've talked about is just better tools. And that always comes up. Right now, we're really focused on just getting in whatever we need for beta, so a lot of tools will fall by the wayside. So what I did is I kind of found a roundabout way of doing this. So I'm going to create a texture. The issue is I want to see visually on the map where I'm actually applying something. So I'm going to find this red texture. And I'm down here is where I'm saying, very close to the camera, I want you to trigger these flowers. The problem is when I go over to here, I can't really see like where that actually is. It's very hard to tell. I can see there's some flowers, so I can assume that's where it is. But as an overall whole, it's kind of hard to say how many flowers am I sticking on this grassland. So what I'm going to do here on this multi is just add another node. I'm going to say I also want you to put this red texture. When I hit save, you can see the highlighted red area. And obviously this is just a kind of quality of life tool. It'd be nice to just click a color and say, okay, everything down from this node, I want you to color, this color so that I can find it really easily. So this is just a nice little way to see where I'm spawning flowers very quickly. And likewise, if I actually move this up, let's just go up the chain here. I'm going to go all the way to here. And then we're going to do this. And this should encompass more of the terrain. So now I've got everything down from here, which includes all these noise functions, set up flowers, grass, everything but these little areas is being influenced downstream from that. So it's just a handy way to see what you're doing, and it's really, really, really important when you haven't looked at a mod in a while and you're like, I have no idea what I was trying to do here. It's especially important when like somebody else uses this, because a very good use case is Ben and I approach these things very differently, which is why I was mentioning we came up with a more constructive way to set up our settings so that it's a little bit easier to for different people to build and come in and just reference a bunch of settings. So if you wanted to set up rolling hills, all I would do is just set them up. I could put a name on it: rolling hills small, rolling hills high, rolling hills large, or whatever. Change a few numbers in here, hit save, and I'd go, okay, well there's my large rolling hills with valleys. And I would name it, save it out, and then what Ben could do is he could take like a flat grass area or a flat forest area and apply that, and the whole thing would suddenly change. So what I said I was going to do is change the base mod. So I'm going to change the base mod. We'll just change it for show and tell here. So this will change it to the VFX mod that we were just brute forcing this last weekend. And in this case, let me see, do I have a... And as you can see, it inherits everything. So we have the particles, where they go? I don't know if you guys will be able to see this. There's a whole bunch of little bug particles flying around. So these guys are showing up. Someone's messaging me. Is that you messaging me, Max?
Huh?
Are you messaging me?
Am I messaging?
I heard a tap, tap, tap from your...
No, that was Andrew in code chat.
Oh, okay. So in this case, it's got the VFX attached to a specific asset. So in this case, there is one leaf or clover card that's attached, has these VFX attached to it. And then Mike and I will just kind of figure out like what's the size and the volume that these things need to sit at when I spawn them. So in this case, the whole thing just procedurally spawns in, and I can, you know, scale the size of this up. I can scale the size of it down. I can layer more mods in with it. And what I was going to see is if I have this, I think I have it set up with a beach. So let's see. If I turn this on, you'll see this, the beach start to show up as I bring it down towards the water. Hopefully. No. Why are we not doing that? Did I use the right one? Oh, no, wrong one. So here's an older version, and this has a beach on it. So in this case, this actually mixes two mods. This is the Autumn Forest mod. And I love my little saplings. Little saplings. And the same thing, it's just like I did with the flowers. This is just a little Perlin selection of where these go. Same thing with the terrain for rocks, showing off little bits of rock and stuff poking through. And, you know, it's very hard for me to look at old work as an artist. There's still plenty of things I want to do to this. There's still plenty of tools we want to build for this thing. So imagine where this thing's going to be in a year. And then what this is doing is it's actually mixing in this whole clover red grass mod along with it. And then what I was illustrating, or trying to illustrate, was that if I move one of these points down, it says it pays attention to the beach. So then it says, okay, when I get to, I don't know how many meters this is offhand, but let's say 1.5 meters, 2 meters, I want you to start fading in sand. And this is actually a very hard edge, so that's just an easy setting, and you know, there's more finagling that goes on to get this to look right. And you know, I want the grass cards to not maybe spawn in the sand because they look better with the grass on the bottom. There's a lot of little tweaks that you can do, but to illustrate the point, I can just drop one of these down and it will continue to update. And I'm looking forward to Brad's change because it's supposed to speed up this updating. So yeah, you can see there's a little visual bug here where the assets are floating after I've moved the point down. But as you can see, there's a whole lot of work that goes into kind of setting up the mods, the behaviors of what the terrain is going to do and what you're going to spawn on it. And there's a lot of work that goes in on that side. But once we've kind of completed that, not only can we mix and match those things, but it's super easy just to be like, okay, I'm going to build a zone. I've seen, you know, like I said, if you go out to kilometers, you can build a zone really fast, throw in a bunch of mods and get the start of something. After that, then we go in and start, we can go in and hand place specific assets. We can massage some of the terrain by hand if we need to. Anything that requires a little bit of attention we can do after the fact. But the point is we don't have to have 30 people working on a giant zone just to get the basics put together. You know, a lot of studios used to place each and every one of these ferns. And that I'd probably kill myself, as much as I love ferns. There's a lot of fun things we can do with this. Here, I'll just start messing with it. I'm gonna jump back. what was the mod I had on there? Grass. Okay, so as you can see, it left a lot of the assets on there. And I mean, interestingly, this illustrates one of my points that once you start mixing and matching things, even I'm going to refresh this scene and it'll refresh the spawned items, but you can see how different all of a sudden that feels. Just changing up the colors and everything. And one of the things I'm hoping to do with Ben is to have him use things in ways I did not plan them for, instead of kind of the linear thought process of, you know, make exactly this. I want to see Ben just kind of put stuff together from a design perspective instead of an artist perspective. So what I'm going to do here, I don't seem to have something wonky happened. I'm missing things. Alright, close you. We'll switch my screen. Scene. All right, there, my warps are all back. So I'm going to pull, since I'm kind of turning this into a demo and starting to build an island, you can see how far I've gotten in building an island. I'm going to pop Twitch up here for myself so I can see if anybody's asked any interesting questions. Oh, it looks like Mark's already in here. Okay, so I'm just gonna do something fun, and then I'll get back to my original intent of making an island. I am going to move this back over to my other screen, and I'll switch it so you guys can see it. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I got the right mod open, we're going to play with warps. It's one of the easiest ways to get interesting results. So actually in this case what I did is I made these more hard-edged. Get down here so you can see it. See how they kind of soften up these lumps here? And I can probably blow them up here. There you go. So you can tell this looks very different than what it was a moment ago. It's still a grassy field, and now we've got these kind of large rock plateaus. And in all honesty, I wouldn't have thought it would look like that. I just played with some numbers real quick to see what would happen. And shit, I actually like that. That's really interesting. So the one thing that's really cool here is where we get these kind of this lumpiness in the side of the rock. And what would be good here is to maybe spawn some big rocks or something coming out of the walls. And to do that, I would basically just say here where I'm spawning this texture, place some boulders and things. That's really interesting. So the cool thing here, and this is illustrating exactly what I was hoping for, is that when you get other people playing with these things and just playing with the numbers, you get different areas. So as an art team, we don't necessarily have to develop and sculpt by hand every kilometer of this map. In this case, you could have a rolling grassy hill that slowly kind of segues into this kind of plateau thing. And let's see, I can exacerbate this more, and let's just see what happens. There's a point where it's going to get ugly. And by ugly, I mean like not the way the artist intended. So here we're starting to get a little bit of wonkiness. And here you can see where we've got these little points poking up. I can illustrate that better if I put the points on. Let's see if we can find the magic number. No, they don't want to attach. There they go. So they're starting to actually attach to where they go. So this is actually easily controllable. What is happening here is at a smaller subdivision level than I would like. We're getting all these little bits of noise. From a distance, it's probably interesting, but what I would want to do is start mixing this up. Like I would want some edges with a harder edge, I'd want some softer slopes, and I can do that very easily by just setting up another noise function, selecting an area of it, and saying I want you to have soft slopes and I want you to have hard slopes. And you can see we're already getting, I mean, think about the difference in gameplay here. I mean, that's one of the big things that has just suddenly changed, is now you're jockeying for position between these masses instead of just going up and over hills. Let's see. So this should bring me back to normal. So we're back to regular hills. Now what I'm going to do, okay, so now what I've done is I've just increased the intensity, so we get this really lumpy thing. And then we're going to play with a fun number, which is the horizontal movement, and I don't know what we're going to get. That doesn't do anything interesting. Look at that. So literally what I've done is I've overlapped the terrain on top of itself. We don't want to do that. So that gives us the big rock protuberances. I mean, even there, like there's a starting point. This would be really good if we actually spawned some rock models as well within there. But as you can see, like if we mixed two different textures for rocks in there, we start getting these nice little plateaus. Suddenly we're very different than we were before. And I can actually, you know, if I really wanted to, I could go in and, like if I wanted to edit some of this by hand. And you can see here where I'm illustrating, like this gets beyond the bounds of the way the mod is set up. So what we would need to do here is start planning for like, oh, what if we get these huge slopes? How do we make those look interesting? So there's a certain scale that everything's going to work in. So with these settings, I can continue. Let's see, I was at 512. Okay, so this is 1,000 kilometers long, or sorry, wide. And I've saved this out, and I'm gonna bring this back down. So this is going to bring us back to where we were. Now, one of the things I can do is you're like, oh, Tyler, you know, this is boring. I've seen enough grass. So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, let's put some woods in here. So now what I can do is I can say over here, there's different ways I can do this. One would be to mix it through the mods. I could basically say, in this area, I want you to put something completely different. The other way that I can do it is I can select this point and click on him, and we're going to add an influence. So in this case, I'm just going to type the word forest. I don't know what, I can't remember all the namings that we've given things. Let's see what this does. Alright, I think we're hitting that don't spawn stuff thing. So Let's save this so that it retains it. This is there it goes. It's not playing nice with me. Yeah, I saw this coming. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, like I said, a little buggy right now. I'm going to close the editor and open this up, and it should all still be there. I also have Maya, Photoshop, and all this other stuff running. You guys don't want to see the... So the cool thing is we have piles of terrain textures, and there's never enough, I can tell you that. So the cool thing is like, let's say I made a beach mod. Sorry, I'm trying to fill the time here while it opens. If I had a beach mod, let's say, and the beach had different types of sand on it, I can actually just go in and clone that beach mod. Okay, you guys should have the window again. And oh, you're killing me. Where are my trees? Oh, okay, they just took a moment to load in. Okay, so what's going on here? This is easier to understand when you look at it from the top. There's a point right in the middle, and I've assigned this forest mod. And this is a fairly simple forest mod. It's just some different textures on the ground, some bushes, some trees. If you look at any of our updates over the last couple of weeks, you'll see that I've had things in there that are like, adding logs and tree variations, sticks, branches, things like that. Those are things that we learned that work well in the pine forest that I'm trying to bring back to this original setup, which was just trees and bushes. So if you look at it from the top, this is basically there's a point right here in the middle. I'll turn these on. And you can see this point has been edited. That's why it's red. And what it's doing is it's saying I want a 100% influence, and then I want you to come out to here, and then this will be 100% grass. And what it actually does is it fades. It's a little hard to tell. It's kind of based on the strength. But you'll start seeing the grass from the other side. This right here is that grass. The grass from over there is coming in and blending over to the other side. And if you look, we've got, like I said, VFX attached to the trees, so falling trees. In this case, this is actually a good illustration if we just wanted to put lots of particles coming out of the trees, and if Mike was sitting right next to me, he could just type in, literally every day I turn to him and I say, hey, can you just tone down the number of leaves falling out of the trees? And Mike will sit there and go tap, tap, hit save, and then I'll wait like 3 seconds and you'll see the number of leaves stop. So it's a really handy system for anybody who's ever worked in games, say 10 years ago. You know that making small changes used to be like a 20-minute wait. With us, it's only sometimes seconds. So in this case, we are blending. You can see where this new texture is being introduced. This is like a leaves. I call these usually ground cover textures because they have a little bit of everything in them. And we're actually now blending into a forest. And in this case, let's turn these off. You can see it's, like I said, this is a simple mod. It's bushes and trees. And this was partially for testing a long time ago. So one of the things we're looking at is more turbulence in the terrain. Little areas of ferns, different colors, more weeds. I literally have Dion behind me working on stumps, like from fallen tree or logs from fallen trees, and the stumps that those logs have fallen from, including. I'll back up a sec. There's a company that we've been using a lot of their software and some of their stuff from Quixel. and they did something they opened a site called Megascans, and what they do is they use photogrammetry, which is how can I put this? They take pictures of real-world objects and with laser scanning generate an actual 3D model. So if you look at Star Wars Battlefront, they used a lot of photogrammetry where they literally took a picture of, say, a dead log at the Endor Forest, where I actually used to live in San Francisco, and make a 3D model out of it. They make all the different texture maps they're going to need for lighting it and rendering it, and then they turn that into a flat model, and then they kind of just stick that in the terrain. So that is very expensive. It costs a lot just in textures and polys. So what I've been trying to do is make it so that we could get a lot more realism, but on a budget where we want to support 500 players at the same time in this forest. So what I've been doing is using some of their assets when they scan these. And in this case, Dion has a tree over there that's gorgeous. It's a big trunk that's fallen over. The amount of time it would take us to get like a nice organic looking thing with roots and pieces coming out the base of it is prohibitive versus buying the asset and changing it to our needs. And in this case, these things are meant for really high poly, usually non-real-time use. So what I do is I turn it into something that will run much more efficiently in our engine with 500 players on screen. And that really is just as simple as reducing the poly count, updating the textures so that they'll work well with our lighting system. A while ago we introduced a physically based rendering system. I picked up a mistake there. And what that does is it uses a rough and a spec map to try and make materials look more literally like what they are, the way we see them, so that I can differentiate leather from metal, fern from cloth, etc., etc. It's something that is still relatively new in the industry. So in this case, Dion is working on using some of those source assets to get a more natural look faster, and then we audit it to perform on our engine. So what I'm going to be doing is taking some of these assets and putting them on this island and then adding to the forest so that you get some nice little things that you might find in here. So in this case, while you're going through this, you can only go so long before you're like, okay, well, I've seen the same trees and everything. So we start using the terrain system to procedurally mix this up. And you're like, oh, well, over here, there's some more birches. And then we hand place, oh, there's a little statue. And we can start kind of breaking up one of the concerns that a lot of people have about a procedural system, that everything is going to look the same. And as you can see, I just messed with some numbers earlier and I got a very different look in an area. As long as we keep doing that and do it in a smart way that we can work with and maintain that, we can build these things really fast. I mean, we can get the variation really fast. Like this birch tree, I added this guy in a day. So as an artist, I'm not totally happy with the way I laid out his polys. But I added one birch tree in, and now he spawns randomly in this forest, and he helps break things up. And if I wanted to, we could just kind of make little areas that are just birch trees. Let's see, where am I going? So right now, this is the basics of putting together an island. The next step I would actually go into is start placing things. So in this case, what we actually want to do is set up a fake castle here for testing. Just kind of a facade for right now versus when we actually put in plots for using cube buildings, which are fully physics, server-side, destructible, block by block, amazing technology. And what we want to do is always have a baseline. So if we do anything in this map having to do with combat, if I have a fake castle or just want to put VFX in it, we know how the system will perform without the actual cube building in it. And then I can just rip that thing out. So in this case, placing an object is super simple. I'm just going to type in statue. So if you looked a couple months ago, maybe, I think John made a bunch of statues, Dion did the materials. One of the things with art and a small team is we have to work smart. So one of the things I pushed right off the start was Dion, who's fresh out of school, had experience with a program, Substance Painter. And I pushed real heavy on that because it was all procedural materials. Back when I started in games, you drew everything, the highlights, the shadows, everything. Now the engine draws the highlights and the shadows, so all of our materials need to be realistic based off of our PBR system. So the statue that I'm about to pull up, I'll illustrate the cool thing. Each one of these statues was modeled by hand, as is normal for game development. The cool thing is the materials that are on this thing are saved out with very specific settings. I spent time talking with John and Dion about, having this kind of old moss and stuff on the top of the model versus the underside. And that's just literally a setting in this editor. And the cool thing is, this one uses the same base material with slightly different settings. So we talked about it for 3 minutes and fiddled with some numbers and got a totally different material assigned to this thing. The cool thing about this, not only the speed, but because we're using a PBR system, one of the exciting things we've talked about is taking this into the crafting, so that you can, depending on like how good of a source materials you use, we can actually change the roughness and specularity on the armor or weapon that you're using. This is not, I'm not going to say we're absolutely doing this. This is right now where we want to go with it, so that's my only little disclaimer. But we have a lot of grand plans to kind of hook up the crafting system and the way we're generating our materials. That should be really, 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 really fucking cool. So anyway, I'm actually going to drop these guys out because they need to be decimated. They need to be reduced. Their poly count, I think, is 30 or 60,000 per head. They just need a reduction. Their texture sizes are 2048s times diffuse color, normal, specular, roughness. So there's 4 2048s on top of each one of these. So they're not going to stay in there right now. So we'll take them out. Oh, and there's my... That's right. These guys are going to hang out until I reset the scene. So Gabe wrote a nice little bit here that will make this guy stay on the ground for me. Oh, no. We were doing so good. There we go. So as you can see, he sticks to the ground. And that's a really, really, really handy thing. So I can kind of move him up this hill. And that's just sexy for artists to be able to place things. So we'll go.
Great idea. Yeah. Cool. This guy should not speak. Just from Bleaches, he's like Woody Allen.
So in this case, you can tell that the material that I had put on here was more for a forest. The idea was like in a mossy forest you would find this. The artist in me would like to probably pop the vibrance, which would be change the color to be a little bit more this limey color I've got going in here. So in this case, I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to go in here and run around. To do that, I need the zone.
Don't see the connection, but anyway. Thanks.
Okay, so here's the zone ID. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in when I jump into the game, I'm going to say I want to go to that zone. And I'm going to say I want to come in as a naked male Arthurian. That's literally what I'm typing here. Or not naked male Arthurian. No server 15 is my character. Fly is true. We'll turn the descent off. I'm forgetting something. Oh, character at size. So this will up the resolution of the character's textures. And cross your fingers, I should show up in this zone over here. And I did just find an insert there, so it may not be updated. Did we lock up? I think we locked up. Editor. Client. Try you again. I'd say probably there's two parts putting the terrain together that takes the most time. It's one, making the assets, partially because we don't just throw polys around. We're very judicious about the poly count, getting the assets to look good, add a lower poly count and sell it for a forest scene. Takes a bit of extra work and kind of some creativity you're not normally used to having to do on some projects. Dismiss. So in this case, I have shown up on my island. I think I can turn fly off. Yeah, I'm stuck. So I'm gonna bring this over here, and I'm gonna change the daytime to a nice afternoon. So right now, my guy is obviously naked because I'm not using the server. He's not getting any armor. He's not getting any weapons. He's right now in a default travel stance holding a torch. He doesn't have a torch because I'm not hooked up to the server or to the network. In this case, the sun is coming down, hitting the grass. This shininess is something that we can literally play with. So if you look here, you'll notice that when we hit the dirt, we're not actually getting the dirt shiny because dirt is not shiny. Dirt scatters light, and that's what our roughness map does. And these little rocks that are in here actually have a lower roughness value, which will make them smoother, and then I can independently tune how bright or how hot the specular highlight is off of them. All of that's based on the angle that the sun is hitting the camera. Kind of a normal thing in some cases. I just thought I'd explain it because it's a fun part of our PBR system. So in this case, I'm just gonna mosey on over in my boxers. Now what you'll see here is as I get closer to the forest, we have a kind of a 1.0 version of lighting in here. The lighting is calculated every 6 frames off the character. There is I think it's 10 to 20 meters based off the character's radius. So we literally take a cube, we take 6 shots around the character. We take that picture, we compress it down, and we determine the color and intensity of the lighting based off the histogram that comes off of those pictures. What that means is if it's blue sky above me, my character will actually have a little bit of blue light hitting him from above, and if he's down below, he'll have more green light hitting him from underneath. That value is toned down to a more realistic level. When we first, like Andrew first started playing with some of this, like the character would be on green grass and would just be, neon green underneath them, so it wasn't very realistic. But in this case, if I go to different areas in the world, like if I'm over, a shadow, it's going to say, hey, a little bit more of this underneath you is going to be darker. But remember, this is calculated in a larger volume around me. It's not that specific to that little spot. It just will influence the image that's generated under the character. So what you'll see here is part of something we'll address later, which would be the 2.0 version of lighting. As my character walks towards the forest, you'll see the forest every 6 frames will change color. So once I get in here, you'll start seeing it change. See how it starts getting darker, darker, darker. And so what's happening here is the world's lighting is being influenced by the character's position. The 2.0 version of this would actually make the forest independently lit from the character. And then as the character moves up, think of it as a grid of spheres. This is the current discussion. This is not my brilliance. This is George and Andrew. think of it as a grid with a bunch of spheres, and each one of those spheres generate lighting information and then light that area and then blend with the one next to it. And your character will blend as he moves through all that stuff. So that is Map Building 101. As you can see, it's really easy to put these things together really quick once we've got a library. And the cool thing is as the library grows, the more permutations we get. The most important thing for us at that point is making sure that we're maintaining our library of assets intelligently so that it's easy for people to work with. Make sure that we maintain the art direction for any category of stuff. So we've actually been calling things a biome incorrectly, and I think we can blame me for that. I was calling like the grassland a biome. Biome, Ben pointed out, is more like the whole eastern seaboard. Just the whole side of the United States would be a biome. So part of our organization discussion was to step back from everything and say everything within that biome should work together. That way, if Ben says, oh, I want to put some ferns down, and I want to put some trees down, and I want to put some rocks down, and I want to make some little plateaus, they all should kind of fit together. Now, the exciting and difficult part on our end is terrain, knowledge of terrain ownership. So one of the things we have on our Beta 1 list is the terrain swapping with ownership by a specific realm. Right now, what you're looking at is roughly a neutral area. When the TDD take over or the Arthurians take over, this whole thing, the look of this can change. Right now, what we're focusing on, partly for speed, is doing subtle texture changes to everything. So we actually just kind of I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but there's some art direction behind it that kind of says, okay, when you're in this area and the Vikings have taken it over, you should know that the Vikings have taken it over. And we can further give you that impression by specific sounds that spawn when a realm takes it over, specific VFX that happen, maybe different trees, maybe different rocks. Anything we can change in there can swap out based on who owns it. So that's one of, right now is currently on Brad's queue to get to. So yeah, what else? Where's the statue? There's the statue. And if you look at last week's update, Michelle did some quick concepting for the statue, some VFX to put on this, because we've been using him as a spawn point marker. And they're all the same. So Mike, in testing some of our new VFX tools, is working on different VFX that will kind of sit over this book when you find it. Mark and I were talking about shiny. There's some older materials in here. So if you look at this guy, I don't know if you can see it. He gets kind of a shiny highlight. And that material just needs to be adjusted. Oh, I know literally what's happening. See how the shiny goes away as I get closer. So we're mipping this texture down, and I'm willing to bet that the ratio of like bright to dark pixels is changing. So when we get farther away, I bet you our rough is getting less, we're getting less white value in the mip map texture. So he's technically getting shinier because we're getting black in there, which tells the engine I'm shiny. Interesting. There's that. And then we have happy accidents, like this happy tree. I probably shouldn't show you guys this because this is a little bit too adult for you. This is two trees doing it. If you've ever seen this, the digital version of two trees doing it looks exactly like this. Okay. I'm going to pop this over to Discord real quick and see if there's someone's asked something specific, or not Discord, Twitch. Let's change my setup. That Wolf is asking what's the software's name. This is a whole in-house engine. I didn't look at and see what the frame time on this was doing. Yeah, so right now I think I'm clobbering this with all the leaves falling. Curiosity has struck. When taken over, does it change instantly or over a few hours? Or is it, part of that decision is going to be based on what is feasible on the tech side. That's something that we're going to have to look at when Brad has literally done a whole lot of terrain work and also a lot of threading work with the threading system that George put in. So we're just going to have to see what happens with performance based on how fast we do it, and we'll see where that goes. And then obviously after that, then design can kind of work within those parameters and figure out what they want to do with it. Someone asked about how it's looking at night. So one of the tasks that George has coming up is make night work. The fun thing about games is basically all of this is math. So there's a whole bunch. It's really interesting just from an artistic perspective when you're trying to make visuals, get a look you're going after is trying to understand kind of how everything actually works from the rendering side of things. So there's a whole bunch of values that we can change and play with and try and massage to what we want, but then there's issues such as night doesn't quite work. So I can actually, let's change this to 0. So one of the things that will happen at night is we get really, really pitch black, and we also it's a bit too dark when there's no moon. So right now there's a moon up there, so he's casting a light. If that moon goes away, this is almost unplayable.
Hey, I'm scheduled to read a story at 6 in 15 minutes, but
Okay.
you seem to be on a roll,
No, I'm
so
good.
if you want to carry right on.
No, I've talked through a lot of the terrain things.
Okay.
Plus, I can't stay super late tonight.
I'm reading the Silverhands Becoming story in 15 minutes on stream, folks.
Yeah, plus I can't imagine that people want to stare at me for this long.
I can barely do it for a day.
Yeah, I don't. Hopefully, you didn't hear Mark's crack. It wasn't worth hearing. It was at my expense. So anyway, right now this is night. Like I said, George is going to go in and make night work. So if you think this looks good, it's going to get way better. Let me see if there are any other questions. Yes, Tyler, put the VFX in the night. Yeah, so one of the fun things will be, let's see if they're on here. Yeah, so this tree over here. So this was a joke that I got these glows in finally when I put these. I'll turn this back. So these little guys down here were these little lichen pieces that I put on that glow at night, and I think it was like it took forever. Like we actually, one of those things that we just don't need right away. I think George finally put glow in. Oh, look at that. That's not right. Tyler found a mistake. So if you look here, you can see that this bark here is lighter than this bark here. So gotta fix that. In that case, there's one bark here with the moss creeping up it, and then it goes up to the regular bark up into the trees. And I cannot tell you how much, like how excited we are about how much improvement is still possible. And just in what you're looking at right here, we've got so many other things queued up, to do later. So many, just to make it look good, to make it play good, to keep working on the editor, to be able to do more fun things. I'm digressing simply because when I look at this, it looks great. And then I think about all the other things we've talked about doing with the engine to make it even look better. I mean, can you guys imagine, like, you're in here playing and some guy's sneaking around in the bushes over there and you can't see him, but you can hear him. We've talked about fun things like, you know, trigger volumes in the bushes, or when you're in the bushes, you make little noises, but that might be based on your stats. There's a whole lot of fun things that we've talked about. So just bear with us and we'll keep adding new cool things. And even this, like, this looks great, and this has George did a very quick, cheap God Ray effect. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of right here on my screen. And that's the cheap version. So we're going to keep trucking along on this guy. Hopefully when you see this island next, we'll have some of Dion's logs and sticks and more weeds and, you know, more elevation changes, little bushes, colors, flowers, more VFX. I'd like to try adding, where'd my lichen go? I'd like to try adding, where's my lichen? Little blue lights to the lichen. Just so you have these nice subtle, here they are. So that as the character walked by, you get these subtle highlights from the blue as you walk through. And one of the things we've found in testing is that being able to see somebody else is always an interesting choice. Like, literally, if you're out here in the dark and you turn on a torch, people can see you. Suddenly there's a torch out there, and we've had, you know, matches where you see someone turn a torch on and everybody starts shooting over at that guy. So it's one of the fun things that I think the engine is supporting such great frame rate with so much stuff. I mean, this is, I never thought even putting this much stuff in there was possible, and I'm telling you, we have room to grow. So this much stuff in the scene, you throw more characters in and you've got big battles. Just very cool, and very proud to be working on this. And I definitely have to give a shout out to George and Andrew for making things look good. Because one of the tough parts about doing the art, and you've got to keep the poly count low, is you put a nice rendering engine on, or if you don't have a good rendering engine, it really shows off how low poly things can be. These ferns are under 50 polys a piece. Okay, Mark, is there anything else you want me to oh, he can't hear me. He's got his noise canceling headphones on. Let's go see if he wanted me to show off anything. We could actually try one thing here. I'm going.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, there.
I can hear you.
Oh no, I was gonna say, is there anything you want me to do?
I know. I was listening to you. I was listening to you on Twitch.
I was gonna quickly update the scene and see if it updates.
Yeah.
Let's see. So here's the scene. As you can see, I am running around. And what I'm going to do in my scene, let's see what screen setup do I have. Okay, we need 2 screens. Okay, so what I'm going to do is over here you have the world editor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if we can update. Like I said, this is a live environment, so we'll see what happens here. And by live environment, I mean everybody's actively working on this build. So you never know what's going on until you find it. Let's turn the terrain on, the terrain control points, and I'm going to pick something really obvious to assign right here. Let's see, where is that? There's the forest. Let's get our guy out there. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to bring the guy down here, and that should line up pretty well with this. And where's the point I was messing with? Pick this one now. No! Are you still looking? Oh, he's unhappy. Nope, I got it. So we'll add a mod here. I'll pick something obvious like that red clover grass stuff. this one. Okay, and this, like I said, this is the bug we were seeing earlier where I don't see it update, but I know it's been added. Let's see what happens. There it goes. I saved. We're seeing some of it pop in, and you can see it's blending out. Looks like a massacre. And let's see what happens over here. That should be over here. So this takes a minute. We should actually see those changes populate over here. Do I have both screens up? I don't. Okay, so there's the game. And what should happen is roughly here-ish. We should see this update in a moment. Pull up Twitch. Man, I thought Twitch didn't used to have such a long delay. It feels like you guys are like 30 seconds behind. Come on, there it goes. Okay, so it just rebuilt, and there's the change. So I think what's happened here, might be a little bit of a bug, is I don't have my grass cards. Oh, there they go. So now, pretend you guys were playing a live game, or we were testing something, and we suddenly wanted to make a change. I don't have to just rebuild the whole thing. You guys can actually be playing at the same time that we drop new stuff in. And like I said, I mean, imagine if we shifted this grass to more of a brown. Like, it would actually blend in really well with this, and you'd get a nice little subtle variation. Like this already, this is one of those happy accidents. Like, this looks really interesting. Like, I would drop the clover out. He doesn't really belong anymore. But if we just kind of browned this up and desaturated a little bit, like, this could look really interesting as this little area that you might come across. And as you can see, this little area that you might come across, just adding this variation where it's blending with the surrounding mods. I did that in, what, a minute? And then waited? Not a minute. So as we build out this library, this just gives us so much to play with and so many variations. And, you know, like I said, I could go in here and be like, oh, I want to put a rock right there. I actually did that during testing. This is one of my fun stories that before we rebuilt the abilities system and started on this second adventure, thank you for your patience, by the way, we were doing some testing in a very small map.
Don't forget.
Max?
Max.
Yeah. Okay, I got to wrap up in 4 minutes. We had a little map that I built by hand before we had the whole procedural terrain system, and like I said, it's in its infancy, so that's exciting. God, the Twitch stream is so far behind. We were playing, and there's this little choke point, and I was trying to, I don't know, shoot somebody or something, and I just needed a rock. So while the office was playing with some of our backers, I opened up the editor and put a rock right where I needed cover, and just waited a moment, and the rock showed up, and nobody noticed, and I went over and stood right next to it and was able to cover myself. So fun things like that. So I'm going to wrap up here. I hope you guys enjoyed kind of a minimal peek into how quick it is for us to actually generate an island. So when we ever say anything like, this is just a placeholder island, this is temporary work, it's going to change, it shouldn't freak you out. For us to be able to go in and make these changes happens fairly quickly, as you can see, and bringing, you know, making changes on the fly if we need to. Anything design changes, we don't need to bring everything down. We can just make these on the fly. If everybody's getting stuck in a specific spot, I can do exactly what I just did here and, you know, change the terrain a little bit, hit save, and the whole thing will update, and we don't need to bring the whole server down. That's a fun, very powerful piece of tech. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. If anybody wants to see any of the just general working, I think if you probably just search my name for any of the past times I've been working in the terrain editor or making environment art, you can just find all of that stuff. There's plenty of videos. I've had evenings where I've stayed here late and streamed for like 5 hours. So if you want a very long peek into game dev life, there you go. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to trust that Mark has been getting a lot of the questions here.
I have.
All right, I'm going to sign off. Max is going to read, what did he say, the Silverhand's Becoming story, part 1. So stay tuned for his sonorous voice. Bye all.